When people think about military experience, they usually picture discipline, structure, and leadership. And sure, those things are part of it. But when veterans transition into civilian careers, especially in fleet, a lot of those experiences show up in ways people don't always recognize right away. It's staying calm when things change quickly. It's learning how to adapt when the plan goes sideways. It's communicating under pressure and figuring out how to keep operations moving even when the situation in front of you isn't perfect. And for many veterans working in fleet today, those lessons still shape the way they approach the job every single day. So for this episode of Shades of Fleet, we asked veterans across the fleet industry to talk about the transition from military service into fleet, the leadership lessons they still carry with them, and what they wish more people understood about that experience.
Hi, I'm Fred Hilquith, Director of the PMO at Mike Albert Fleet Solutions. I served in the Air Force, and every role was critical, from pilots to maintenance to finance, and fleet management is much the same. It requires total synchronization across an organization to keep those vehicles mission ready. The goal is that we look at vehicle health, maintenance trends, and telematic information to proactively support the drivers. Because we know that if the fleet isn't optimized, the whole business slows down.
Hey, my name is Jesse Ostovich. I'm a Fleet Success Manager with RTA, the Fleet Success Company. I served in the Army for 6 years, roughly, and I was a wheeled vehicle mechanic who transitioned into being an NCOIC of a motor pool prior to even exiting the Army as well. It was an awesome experience.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick McCauley. I'm the fleet manager for P1 Construction out of Lenexa, Kansas. I've been here for about 4.5 years now and truly love leading the fleet operations for my company. After I graduated high school in 2009, I joined the United States Army as a combat engineer. So I was born and raised in Rhode Island and got sent off to Kansas, which was a bit of a shock for me, but I knew that I wanted to get this military experience before I started school, college, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Hi, everybody. My name is Peter Egan. I retired from the Army as a colonel after tours in Germany, where we patrolled the border back in the Cold War in the 1960s between Czechoslovakia and West Germany, including a trip to Berlin, which was in itself a very interesting endeavor. After that, I was assigned to Vietnam, and I spent a year in Vietnam, including being present for the very interesting Tet Offensive, and returned stateside in late 1968. Shortly thereafter, I left the active Army and entered the Army Reserves, and I spent about 20 years in the Army Reserves in various assignments, but maybe one of the highlights of that activity was being brigade commander during Exercise Desert Storm, the very first one in the early 1990s. Thank God that was a quick assignment, and it was over before it got started. In my civilian career, I was a vice president of sales and a vice president of international development for Wheels Incorporated, and I retired from Wheels about 2009.
One thing that came up almost immediately in these conversations was how naturally a lot of military experience translates into fleet. Because in this industry, no 2 days are exactly the same. Things break and schedules shift. Priorities will change fast. And whether you're supporting drivers, managing equipment, or leading a team through a tough situation, there's a certain level of adaptability and problem solving that comes with the job. For many veterans, that mindset already feels familiar long before they ever enter the fleet industry.
One of the big skills that the skill or mindset, if you will, from my military time that I use in my position is strong communication and leadership. I think communication is pivotal to literally every part of life, especially in your career and with this career as a fleet manager or anything to do with the fleet world. We communicate to many different types of people, and if you can't communicate, this job it won't get done efficiently, and there's really only one choice, is for you to be able to communicate very effectively to your audience, whether that be internal customers, external customers, dealerships, vendors, co-workers, everybody.
I know this is a blinding flash of the obvious, but it is get organized. I mean, the Army And the rest of the military is nothing if it's not organized. They have structures and SOPs for everything. But they are very prepared when they get ready to do something. And I think that as a leader in a civilian organization, you can bring that preparedness scenario to just about anything you do. And if you've got the roadmap laid out properly, people will jump on it and accomplish the tasks that you have in mind.
Big one is adaptability under pressure. In the military, plans change constantly. Resources were not always perfect, and the mission still had to move forward. That mindset carried directly into fleet. Whether it is a vehicle down, or a technician shortage, or a parts delay, or a customer needing support quickly, I learned to stay calm, assess the situation, and prioritize what matters most, and find a practical path forward.
But even when the skills transfer over naturally, that doesn't mean the transition itself is always easy. A few people talked about how different civilian life felt after leaving the military. Not just the work itself, but the structure, the pace, and even the sense of community that comes with being part of a military unit. And for some veterans, adjusting to that change can take time.
One military exercise that has helped me in my civilian career is travel. Again, the military is very big on moving here and moving there, and moving as an individual or sometimes moving as big units. So traveling in civilian life is actually a lot simpler because all you have to do is figure out where you need to go, which sometimes is easier said than done, especially with all of the interesting wrinkles that involves traveling these days. But the ability to travel quickly and getting where you need to go, I think is a very helpful tool that comes through from the military.
When you transition from military service into fleet or a civilian role, this is a good one. The biggest adjustment was learning that civilian fleet operations can sometimes have less structure than the military. Honestly, I've learned that not just in fleet, it's just been in every civilian role that I've had since I've been out as well. In the Army, though, roles and processes and expectations were usually very clear and defined for the most part. In civilian fleet, I had to adapt to different leadership styles, communication methods, and operational priorities. That experience taught me to bring the structure and discipline I learned in the military while also staying flexible and open to new ways of doing things.
Something else that stood out in these conversations was the way military experience shaped how these veterans approach leadership. Not just managing people, but showing up for your team, working alongside them, and communicating clearly when things get difficult, and keeping people focused when the pressure is on. And in Fleet, those leadership skills can impact everything from safety and operations to team culture and trust.
So leadership, on the other hand, is something that I really take pride in having as a skill because I was able to, utilize that throughout my Army time, and I utilize it every day in this role. I was promoted to sergeant when I was under 21, so that was a big achievement for me, and I took being a leader really serious. I was a team leader in Iraq, which was, it was a great experience for me to be able to lead my guys in those situations that I know would be life or death. And in the civilian world, not always life or death, obviously, but there's decisions that are super important. Sometimes they are safety related, so maybe it could be life or death. But being a strong leader is so helpful. I truly think that a fleet manager is a genuine leader in the company, one of the most important ones. I think our role sometimes doesn't get looked at as, super fitting in the leadership category, if you will, but we need to be strong leaders. We cannot run an effective organization or an effective fleet without being so. So those two things, communication and leadership, are just pivotal, and I really got great experience in the Army to be able to perfect those to the best of my ability. I also think that, leading people translates into leading your team, leading your coworkers, being a good example, showing people how to work through situations and understand, big picture sometimes. One of those situations where you kind of have to, put your Army or military cap on is breaking tough decisions to people at work or giving them information that they may not be super excited to receive, but that's something that we have to do in the military. And when there's tough situations like, someone can't get a raise they're expecting, or there's going to be organizational changes, it's our job as leaders and managers to paint the big picture to the person. And that's something that I directly learned as my time when I was leading a team in the Army. There were situations where we had to break really tough news, and you got to keep focused on the mission. Just like in my job now, I got to keep focused on fleet readiness and operational readiness. It's part of the job, and it's part of being successful with what we do every single day. And every day is completely different, so we have to stay pivoting and stay on our feet and looking for solutions.
My approach to leadership is to build a team. You just have to have people in different areas, and you have to have, in these days especially, people with different experiences and backgrounds to be successful. They just, the life is just too complicated, I think, for one individual to handle alone. So the ability to bring in skill sets and experiences to help you achieve your goals is absolutely paramount to being successful.
My approach to leadership and teamwork was heavily shaped by the military's focus on accountability, trust, and leading by example. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that strong teams are built when leaders are willing to work alongside their people, not just direct them, obviously. In the military, your team depends on you, and you quickly learn that respect is earned through consistency, communication, and being willing to step in when things get difficult. Just like in fleet management, everybody loves seeing their fleet leader out there on the floor with the guys wrenching away. It was the same case in the Army. We got to show that love for one another and build that teamwork.
Another theme that came up was the amount of experience veterans bring into the workforce that doesn't always show up clearly on a resume. A lot of these individuals have already spent years solving problems under pressure, leading teams, maintaining equipment, and adapting in high-stake environments. And while those experiences may not always translate directly on paper, many veterans feel the foundation lines up with Fleet way more than people realize.
I think the thing that surprised me the most when I left the Army and entered my civilian role was the lack of structure. Again, in the Army, they tell you when to get up, they tell you when to go to bed, they tell you where to go and what to do and when to do it. So you've got to develop your own structure in civilian life that amounts to basically personal discipline to get up and get out and do your physical exercises and do your preparations, whether that's going back to school or going to a NAFA seminar or whatever. But you've got to do a lot of that on your own. To a certain degree, maybe your HR people can help you, but I think it works best when you drive the bus yourself.
One of the surprises that kind of popped into my head was that, when you get out of the military, you kind of leave that brotherhood or sisterhood, if you will, and it's tough to get into civilian world where there's sometimes less structure and less bonding, I guess you could say. I had jobs before the fleet industry, and it was so different. I was uncomfortable. I couldn't really get as close to coworkers and friends as I wanted to. Couldn't use my crude sense of humor that we learned in the military, but it really surprised me when I got into fleet because the people I work with are great. I've met fleet managers and industry reps and vendors and upfitters from all over the country, all over the world, and it truly is a brotherhood to me.
For service members thinking about what comes next after military life, Fleet might not always be the first career path people consider. But throughout these conversations, there was a consistent message. If you understand teamwork, communication, operations, and how to adapt when challenges come your way, you may already have more transferable skills than you think. And as these veterans shared, there are a lot of opportunities in Fleet for people willing to take that next step.
And I guess one challenge that veterans face when they enter the fleet industry might just simply be that the fleet industry does not understand or maybe appreciate the depth and the breadth of experience that a vet might have. So again, you think about a 17-year-old recruit or volunteer for any of the services. They're taught some very valuable skills. They've probably traveled a whole lot wherever their assignments take them. They've met interesting people. They may have a language skill. And I think the fleet industry would be very, very well served if they took the vets aside in their very beginning of their assignment to understand better what else they can contribute to the success of the organizations they joined.
After leaving the military, you can expect a significant change in the rhythm. It can feel a little bit isolating at first with that immediate platoon or squadron structure or the esprit de corps. I've worked with several companies since my transition, and the ones I enjoyed most were the truly collaborative ones. Your leadership, system thinking, and adaptability map directly to fleet management. You should look for a team that succeeds and solves problems together. I appreciate that about Mike Albert, and it's how you make a civilian career feel more like a mission again.
In all reality, if you understand the importance of keeping equipment operational, following processes, documenting work, and supporting the mission, then you already have a strong foundation of this industry. One thing I really do encourage, though, is definitely take full advantage of the transition assistance program when getting ready to exit the military and research what fleet-related opportunities are available. A lot of times there's free education that comes along with that and actually preps you before you enter that civilian workforce into the fleet industries. So companies like Ryder, Penske, Republic Services, a lot of them offer that as well. Even some local municipalities have a transition assistant program.
You're going to find people that are very similar to you that know how to deal with the challenges that we face. So that was really cool. That was a shocker to me. When you're in the military, you know, they say the only really job you can do is become a police officer or something like that, and that's not what I wanted to do. So don't get discouraged by thinking that your job may be totally different than what you want to do in the civilian world. I was a combat engineer and looked for explosives and cleared IEDs out in Iraq when I was in the military. So much different than what I do, but some of the foundation is very similar. Taking care of people, leadership, communicating effectively, just being organized and having structure and discipline, that will go light years into the civilian world and especially the fleet world. So I challenge people to take that leap, look into it, try it out. There's going to be a lot of challenges, but they're worth it, and it's a great field to get into.
At the end of the day, every transition story is a little different, but throughout these conversations, one thing came through pretty clearly. The skills developed through military service don't just disappear after someone leaves the military. They continue to shape the way veterans lead teams, solve problems, communicate under pressure, and support operations across the fleet industry every day. And in an industry that depends on adaptability, teamwork, and keeping things moving, those experiences matter. Thanks for watching this episode of Shades of Fleet. Stay tuned for more episodes and check out our previous episodes from new voices to technicians and more.